So I'm feeling a little bit like Robin's Dean right now, and then I had to come after all of these amazing speakers. But I will do my best, and we'll focus on what is my life's work of advancing women and girls. That's pretty much why I'm on the planet. So my life is simple. I already know what's on my tombstone, and I'm just kind of project managing my life backwards. I've spent the last couple of days in Salt Lake City, Utah, at the Global Girl Scouts Convention. How many of you were Girl Scouts? Yes, many of you. Women at the highest levels of leadership have something in common. They were all very often Girl Scouts. They more than often played organized sports and went to girls' school. So if you have a girl in your life and you're trying to ensure that she gets to the top, you can just do those 3 things and forget everything else that I say today. So I was with 6,000 girls for a couple of days. I was humbly invited to serve on the board of the National Girl Scouts, USA. And so I'm done. I can die now. I've reached the pinnacle, and I feel really, really humbled about that. I also am really lucky that I get to execute my purpose as Chief Leadership Officer at Levo League, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Levo. Right now, though, I'm very excited that I get to execute my purpose for being on the planet with all of you today. So when Robin and also Debbie talk about passion and purpose, I am the living, breathing example of that. This is my mom, Brenda. She found out that she was pregnant with me when she was 19 years old. My parents are from Watts, LA. How many of you are familiar with Watts? Okay, LA. So suffice it to say, it was the mid-1970s. It was a rough place and a rough time. My mom didn't know very much outside of Watts, but she knew that she didn't want to raise her family in the same environment that she was growing up in. And so she went to her uncle, who was an Army recruiter, and she said, this guy that's got me pregnant, he's got to join the Army. We're going to get married, and he's going to join the Army, and that's how we're going to get out of Watts. So they were married the summer of 1973, and I was born 9 months later at Fort Lewis Army Base in Tacoma, Washington. So I am here in large part because of my mother's vision and because of her courage. My parents broke a very vicious cycle of poverty and addiction and violence in one generation. In one generation, based off of a very fundamental truth, which is that if you want something you've never had before, you're going to have to do something that you've never done before in order to get it. Fancy that. And I'm really interested in figuring out new ways that we can try to tackle this problem of how do we get more women into leadership. My journey has been focused on that for a very long time. I started my career in Seattle at a place called Seattle Girls School. And it's a middle school that focuses on math, science, and technology. It's my heart. And it's still there today, and I wish there were Seattle Girls Schools all across the world. I then moved to Boston. I worked at Simmons College, which is a women's college in Boston, before moving to New York. When I went to New York, someone in my network, a mentor, said, when you get to New York, you go find Marie Wilson at the White House Project. And for many of you who don't know, Marie Wilson built the Ms. Foundation for Women. She started Take Our Daughters to Work Day. She is a champion in the cause of advancing women and girls. And I worked for Marie for a number of years. I don't know if any of you have ever had a moment in your career where you met someone and you thought, I just want to work for them. And that's what I said to Marie within 10 minutes of meeting her. And I eventually ran the White House Project before advancing my leadership with what I'm doing now at Levo League. And I'm also on the launch team for Lean In. Now, many people ask me, why are you so focused specifically on Gen Y women? Levo is a platform that is here to support Gen Y women in advancing their leadership. And I always say, because I've been very focused on millennials for a while, that it's the first generation of women to assume that their career is the same thing as how they're going to change the world. And I think that's really important. They feel that way because they did what we told them to do. We told them, oh, you can do anything and you can be anything. All you have to do is follow your passion. That's the most important thing. Of course, now they're in the workforce and they realize that following their passion isn't always the key to success, as Robin talked about. But that's part of why I spend my time with them. And I just want to show you a little bit about how Levo League works in less than a minute instead of me talking to you about Levo. So if you can go ahead and play.
Meet Kelly. Like many other young professionals, Kelly has high aspirations.
I want to make upper management someday.
But she still doesn't know how to get there.
I'm kind of stressing out.
Don't stress, Kelly, because Alana...
Who?
I work like 2 desks away from you.
...is about to hook you up with the Levo League.
Here, scoot over. If you want to move up in the world, you have to connect with other Gen Yers like me and find mentors to help you figure things out.
Kelly can tune in to office hours when influential businesswomen like Sheryl Sandberg present. And she can sign up for local Levo events. Kelly can network while she sweats it out. How's that burn feel, Kelly?
Love it.
Levo love it. Dying for pointed advice about getting that raise, Kelly can field questions to mentors like Jennifer directly.
If you're going to ask for a raise, make sure you go in prepared with a number. An increase of 5 to 10% is typical.
When she's ready to ask for that promotion, Kelly has the advice and support to make it happen. Kelly's future is looking brighter. Nice work, Kelly.
So Levo League is one solution. It's one innovation that we're trying out, that we're playing with, to do things that we've never done before. Levo League is an initiative that's focused on one segment of women. So one of the challenges that we have with women's initiatives is that we often try to speak and talk and serve all women as if we're one demographic. Okay? And that's really hard to do because women, believe it or not, are very diverse. So Levo League has decided we're just going to focus on the subset of women that have just graduated from college. They're within the first 5 years of their career. They've done everything we told them to do. They specifically have done exactly what's required in order for them to get their first job. They've put their head down. They focused on achieving really great results, and they've been rewarded. And believe it or not, because that cycle has happened over and over and over again in their lives up until this point, they think that that's the way to be successful. And as Robin has shown us, what happens is that they get into a different ecosystem in which the rules of engagement have changed, but we didn't tell them that when they were in college. I think that we should. I think that Levo League would need to exist if we taught them that. And when they get into the workforce, all of a sudden they're stumbling because they put their head down, they achieve really great results, but instead of getting rewarded, the guy next to them gets the promotion, and then they're really confused and they don't understand why. And that's why Levo exists. Now, of course, we want more women in leadership. And sometimes people ask, well, why is it really important that we have more women in leadership? I do believe in equity. I love Reshma announcing and declaring that she is a feminist with a capital F. I am like all caps feminist, if you can take that even further. But part of the reason why I feel it's really important to advance women's leadership has to do with my experience when I was growing up. My dad used to have all of these conspiracy theories about how there was this small group of elite people that ran the world. And I would be so embarrassed when my friends would come over and he would warn us about these people. I used to think my dad was crazy. Now, of course, as I've gotten older and I've grown, I've come to understand that my dad actually wasn't crazy at all. There is, in fact, at the highest levels of leadership, people who make decisions that impact every single one of us. They often sit around big wooden, marble, glass tables. And until that group of people is diversified with more women, with more people of color, with more members of the LGBT community, with more people with disabilities, with more people with more perspectives, then in my opinion, the biggest crisis that we face is a crisis of leadership, regardless of what you care about. If it's the environment, if it's healthcare, if it's technology, if it's the economy, if it's education, at the end of the day, there are people that are making decisions that are trickling down. And since we know that a diverse group of people coming together often leads to more innovation, then I really do believe that in order for us to tackle some of the world's biggest problems, we simply need more women. We need more of everyone, but women are half the population. So if you take all of the other groups of people that I talked about and you just take women, then we've pretty much got it covered. Now, there are a lot of really great advances that we've made, and Robin talked about some of those. You know, when it comes to women's leadership, women are graduating in higher numbers than men. We're over half of the workforce, and Kelly is the beneficiary of a lot of that. But it's also really important to note that we have a lot of really great challenges, and I'm so glad that Robin pointed out some of them. I mean, at the highest, we only have a small percentage of women in political leadership. If you look at Robin's pyramid, women are very, small, represented at the very top of that. And sometimes people ask, well, what are the barriers to that? Why don't we have more women in positions of power and influence? What's going on? There's a lot of barriers. I wish I had more time because I would talk about the cultural barriers. Thank goodness Robin touched on some of that. We have discrimination. We have lack of economic power. But a lot of the work that I've been doing is very focused on the Kellys of the world. And what I've observed and the research that I've done over what makes some Kellys successful in advancing their leadership, especially when they're first entering the workforce, and why some of them flail. There's a success equation that I've observed that means it's not rocket science in order for you to advance. And I want to talk a little bit about this success equation. The first part of it involves Kelly really exhibiting some particular leadership assets and exhibiting them through her mindset, through her abilities, and her behaviors. One of them is what I call self-viability. This is my son, Kofi. He's 8 years old, and not that long ago, Kofi came up to me, he plopped himself down on my lap, and he looked at me dead in my face, and he said, "Mom, I can run faster than you." And I kind of laughed and I said, "No, you can't." I said, "My legs are longer than yours. I've been running longer than you have." I said, "Honey, if we went outside right now and raced, I would beat you." And Kofi looked at me and you know what he said? "Let's go outside." "Let's go outside right now, Mom." And I laughed just like you did, but of course with my gender lens, I thought this is really incredible. His perception of his abilities are so far away from the reality of his abilities. And if you fast forward, I want you to fast forward 30 years from now, right? When Kofi is at the company, he sees a job posting. There are those 10 qualifications that it says you need to have in order for you to even apply for the job. How many of those qualifications do you think Kofi will need to have or feel he needs to have in order for him to apply? Right? 1, 2, Kofi, my son, 2. And he'll be like, "Oh, it's mine. The job is mine." My daughter, on the other hand, I have a 5-year-old daughter. And if you fast forward 30 years from now and she sees the job posting, it'll have the same 10 qualifications. My daughter will have 8 out of the 10. You know what she's going to call me and say? "Oh, Mom, there's this dream opportunity, it's this dream job, but there's 10 qualifications, and I only have, there's 2 of them I don't have. I don't know, should I go to B school? Should I get a mentor? What can I do in order to compensate for the 2 that I don't have?" And what we find with young women overall that are really successful in advancing their leadership is that they round up, just like Kofi. So if there's anything that you take today, tell women to round up. Okay, because often we're even more qualified. Another asset, and I can't talk about all of them, but one that I think is also really important is this notion of political savvy. Does anybody recognize this image? Okay, a few people. You may be from the Pacific Northwest. Okay, so this is a Mr. Yuck sticker. This sticker was a part of a public health campaign that I was a part of when I was a child. Basically, it was to help protect children from poisons, and parents were expected to put these stickers on household cleaning products, on medications. They were doled out at doctors' offices, at schools, and you were supposed to train your children not to touch anything with the Mr. Yuck sticker on it. Now, whoever created this campaign clearly does not have young children, because if you put a bright green sticker on anything, it's not necessarily going to deter them. But the point was that you were supposed to teach your children that Mr. Yuck was yucky and that you were to avoid it. And the reason why that's there is because when we talk about politics in the context of the workplace, this is exactly how a lot of women feel about politics. It is yucky. What we find is that these young women who were very effective at advancing their leadership The ones who are the superstars really understand that politics is just a part of the ecosystem, and they don't even think about it as yucky or dirty. In fact, one of them that I spoke to, she says, a lot of my friends say they don't like politics, but I don't think they understand. If they're a member of a family, they've been playing politics their entire life. Okay? So to these women, politics is just understanding that every environment that you're in is an ecosystem, and that in order for you to be successful, you need to know how to navigate that ecosystem. And when they say every environment, they mean every environment, including this room. This room right here is a political ecosystem. The third asset that I want to say something about is this whole notion of effective storytelling. So these young women who are really successful in advancing their leadership are very gifted at weaving a personal narrative into an ask or into a pitch or into an argument in a way that really makes you want to listen to them and makes you want to help them. And most fundamentally, they understand that people are compelled by those individuals who have passion and purpose. And they've either achieved some clarity or they've pretended that they've achieved some clarity about what matters most to them and how that's related to where they've been and where they're going. And that's a really important part of enabling others to achieve a shared purpose, which is the definition of leadership that you shared that I love. So the first part of the success equation is really about assets and demonstrating these leadership assets. The second part is, I want to go back to Robin's word, ambition. My favorite book about ambition is Anna Feld's Necessary Dreams. So if you ever get an opportunity to read that book, I love the way she defines ambition as really a desire to achieve mastery of your craft combined with a desire to want recognition for it. And the reason why ambition is sticky with women is because we are socially conditioned not to want that recognition, but that's an important part of ambition. Ambition in this context just means you know what your next step is, you have a sense of what it is, and the next step doesn't have to be, I'm gonna be the CEO, or I'm gonna be a senator. It could be as simple as, I just need to get on that committee, or I just need to know that person, or I just need to show up at this conference. It's very important for you to have a sense of what the next step is so that you can apply your storytelling skills to the third part of the success equation, which is really about access. Access to the people who can help you along the way. So the biggest misnomer about leadership advancement is that it's some kind of sole endeavor. Okay, leadership advancement is a team sport. It's a team sport for everyone. It's a team sport for guys. But somehow we get into this notion of I have to be successful, I have to achieve my goals, and really it requires a village. I shared these images because these are people that I have had access to that have really played an important role in me advancing my leadership. And I share them with you because I want to make it very clear that the leader that you see in front of you speaking today is simply the cumulative investment of other people, okay? Of really phenomenal people like Gloria Steinem, like Gina Davis, who have really invested in me and have invested in my leadership. And so the third part of that success equation is really about making sure that you've got those people in your ecosystem, that you've got them in your network. There's another innovation around mentorship. I want you all to go check out levoleague.com because we're doing mentorship in a different way, but I don't have time to play that one. The success equation I want to review again, which is assets, so making sure that you are demonstrating the assets through your mindset, through your abilities, through your behaviors, that you just know what your next step is, right? And it doesn't have to be a very big step. And that you've got the right people in your ecosystem. We hear a lot about mentors and sponsors. Some of us are burnt out over both of those terms, but I do have to say when young women, like a lot of the ones that I serve are getting out of college, they really don't understand those roles and the importance of them. Mentors are people whose primary value is in what they say to you when you're in the room with them. They're people who help you achieve clarity through guidance and encouragement. When I came to Levo a year and a half ago and we surveyed our constituency, over 80% of the young women in our network, and keep in mind, they've all graduated from college, said that they didn't have a mentor. So part of what we're trying to do at Levo is really redefining what a mentor is, because all of us have people in our lives who help us to achieve clarity through guidance and encouragement. A sponsor, of course, is someone whose primary value is in what they say about you to other people when you're not in the room, which is really important in people who expend their political, their social, and their economic capital on you. But we spend a lot of time at Levo talking about and really supporting women and making sure that they've got people who are helping them, but most importantly, they've got people who are laying their bodies on the table in the rooms where decisions are made about who's going to move forward. And there's always going to be a conversation that's happening about you. You want to inform that conversation, and you want to be a part of advancing your own leadership. I'm going to leave you with this quote that my dad used to always tell me that I used to think he was crazy when he would say this too. Of course, now I get it. That if you want something you've never had before, you'll have to do something you've never done before in order to get it. So today, tomorrow, the next day, if you don't do anything, just think about, what have I done today, or what will I do today that I didn't do the day before in order to advance my own leadership, but also to advance the leadership of another woman, and we'll all be making the world a better place. So thank you.
Terrific, great. So questions from the audience, and great, the crowd has been warmed up by Preacher's Daughter. A mic?
First of all, I just graduated from college, so this was a very exciting talk. I've read and I've also been taught or learned in a class that the gender pay gap doesn't just happen because men just happen to get more promotions, but that part of it is that women don't ask, or don't ask enough, or don't ask for enough, and men do. So I'm just kind of curious on your opinion on that, and do you think it has to do with like women's confidence or our education, and why does that happen?
Well, part of it, I mean, it does happen. I've hired a lot of people in my career. I would say of all of the women that I've hired, only one has ever asked me for more money than I offered her. Every man I have hired has asked me for more money than I offered him. So, I mean, I can tell you from that, and I'm sure many people who are managers who have hired people could tell you that same pattern. So it's absolutely true. I think, though, that instead of us blaming women or just saying, you know, you haven't learned to ask, I think it's really important to go back to the kind of double standards that Robin addressed in her talk, which is that when women ask, we often are perceived differently than when men ask, and we know that, we're not fools, and so that factors into our decision making about what we ask for. So I think that it's important that we muster up the courage, yes, and the drive to do that. I also think it's important that we support other women in doing it, and particularly when we're in positions of hiring people and of making those decisions, that we give women a leg up. And I've kind of gotten to a place where I've said, and I've said to more than one woman, you know, the guy who, you know, I offered this to, or who, he asked for more. And I would encourage you to do that, because of course we all take that into consideration when we make offers. We assume this person's going to negotiate. So yes, it's absolutely a pattern. Levo has a campaign that we do, and it's usually around Equal Pay Day in April, which I really wish we didn't even have to have that day, but it's called the Ask for More campaign, and we do a lot of work around, and a lot of kind of in-person leadership development experiences around what it means to ask and how to ask in a way that your ask will be perceived really well. So what city are you in?
I'm in Middletown, New Jersey. Or I'm working in New York, but I'm from New Jersey.
Okay, yeah, so there's a local Levo chapter, so you should plug in if you're not plugged in. Yeah.
Great.
There's a professor at Carnegie Mellon, I believe her name is Linda Babcock. She's done a lot of research in helping women, get negotiation skills that are, so they don't seem as, being too aggressive or whatever. But she does a lot of great work that you can find online.
Mm-hmm. So to be really clear, women are extraordinary negotiators, and we're extraordinary askers. We just suck at doing it for ourselves, okay? Okay, if I have to negotiate on behalf of my child, are you kidding me? It's not that we don't have the skill or we don't have the talent. We just need to figure out how to psychologically make ourselves feel like if we get paid more money, then it will make the world a better place. And then somehow we're inspired and motivated to do it.
I like that.
This may be redundant now that you've already said a few things about the ask, but when you were talking about the ask, one thing that I've learned in my career is that when I started to ask for things, I would feel awkward asking for it, and I almost ask as a question to see if I had permission to do it. And I think what I've learned is that men go, much like your son, and they say they've got it all outlined, why they should be, you know, what they have everything strategically outlined. You know, this is my value and this is why. It's almost like it's almost not even not an ask. It's just, this is why you should do it, because it's a great thing, you know. So I think for women, we tend to almost sound like we're questioning ourselves when, at least this is what I've learned about myself, is that I was learning, I was questioning myself when I was doing the ask. And so I've had to really think about the ask beforehand so that I could position myself in a way that sounded more convincing and not aggressive.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I have a friend named Katie Orenstein. She runs an organization called the Op-Ed Project, which is a phenomenal organization. And one of the things that Katie often talks about is the abuse of virtues. And it was a bit of a hard pill for me to swallow the first time I heard Katie talk about that. But she talks about how women often use virtues like humility in order to not allow the world to benefit from our talent and from our ingenuity, because we feel that that's a virtue that should be so valued that but if it hinders our success, and if it hinders our progress, and if it hinders our ability for the world to benefit from our innovation and our creativity, then Katie would say that's an abuse of the virtues. So, you know, I know we did the hardest thing that you could possibly do at the White House Project. We spent many years convincing women to run for public office. How many of you would ever run for office? Okay, we have a few hands in the, you know, a half a hand, a kind of wave of a hand, okay? But that's very common. It's a very hard thing to get any men or women to say, oh yeah, me? Oh, I would totally run for office. But the White House Project spent 15 years getting women to say yes to doing that. And we didn't do it by telling women that they should advance their leadership and that, you know, we really wanted them to think about their own ambition and their own leadership trajectory. We did it by identifying issues in their community that we knew that they would care about and that that progress wasn't being made on. And we would go to them and we would say, aren't you really tired of your community being a food desert? Don't you think that something should be done about that? And of course they would say yes. And say, well, we think that the best strategy for that happening is for you to actually run for this seat. And then we got 3 people who we knew were close to them to just also say to them, we think that you should run, because we often believe other people more than we believe our own selves about what we can and should do. And by the time you have 3 people saying, you know, you should really consider that. You know, you should really consider that. You know, you should really consider that. It's like, oh, maybe I should consider that. And you'd be surprised. And many people, you know, we did all of this leadership training and all of these programs, and people would say that was really great. And no one at the White House Project wanted to say, actually, you just get 3 other people to tell a woman to do something, and all of a sudden she believes that she could do it.
I think that worked on The Good Wife.
Yes, yes.
So we have a question over here. And
so other than your history of tricking people into running for office, what is it that you do at Levo? Like specifically, what's your month like?
Yes. So do you mean Levo overall or Tiffany?
Both.
Both. So Levo has an online and an offline presence. Online, when you go to Levo, you can do a number of things. One, you can access a mentor who's there to help you achieve clarity through guidance and encouragement. There are people who volunteer their time. They have a personal dashboard. Anyone can ask that person a question and they can respond to it if they so choose, if it's an appropriate question. You can make your question public or private. Everyone from Warren Buffett to Sheryl Sandberg to Soledad O'Brien to little old me is sitting on the Levo site ready to answer questions. So that's one thing that you can do. You can also watch watch video conversations. So we have a platform called Office Hours, and literally it's like an office hour. Someone is giving their insight and their advice, and you can watch them. We've been doing them every week for the past couple of years, so there's a number that you can watch. You can look for a job. There are companies that post their job opportunities on our site. You can consume the content. There's editorial. We have an editorial team that's producing content. So there's a number of things that you can do on the site. You can also create your profile. Some people call us the LinkedIn for Gen Y women. We hate that. But you can create a profile and you can curate content on your profile. So if you like an office hours, if you like an article, if you like the answer to a mentor's question, you can populate your profile with that so that people can understand what's important to you. Offline, you can attend events in your local community. We have 33 local Levo chapters around the world. And so that's where you take what you learned online and you apply it with your community of sisters offline.
I think we've used up time, or we have, we're used up time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.